I'd also like to recognize a couple special families with us today. We have two Gold Star families here. We've got Pat Sheehan. He's out here somewhere. We remember Casey. We've got Christina and Gustavo Frias, the Frias family. We remember Gustavo. Today I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker, Jim Hardy. Jim is the son of a Navy pilot who was at Pearl Harbor on the day that will live in infamy. Thank you, Flag. He's a college graduate from San Diego State College, which is now known as San Diego State University, and same place my oldest son currently attends. He was drafted shortly after graduating college as an infantry rifleman, but sent to Vietnam as an Army artist. As you can see up here, some of the sketches that he made. He counts his blessing for that. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Hardy up to the stage.
Can I do this? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Can you hear me? Every day you're alive is a good day. This was Mel Escueda's favorite saying to his students at Galileo High School. He was a Marine, Vietnam combat veteran, a teacher, a mentor, the writer of the play Honey Bucket, a poet, a husband, a father, and a good friend of mine. He died on May 9th, 1999, too early at the age of 54. But I remember him and honor him today too, as you will see other ones. Good morning. On March 30th, Jeff Jewell called and asked me if I would be the guest speaker today. I hesitated. What could I talk about on such a solemn occasion without maybe embarrassing myself, or worse, those on whose behalf I would be speaking today? Jeff told me to speak from the heart. Memorial Day falls on the last Monday of May once a year. For me, Memorial Day falls every day. Every day I remember how lucky I was to have made it home when others were not so lucky. In September 1968, I was drafted into the Army and went to Fort Ord, California for basic training, with the option of going on to officer candidate school after basic. I was injured during training and ended up in the hospital. On the ward with me were many soldiers home from Vietnam recovering from their wounds. I sketched portraits of them. When I returned to basic training, I carried a sketchbook with me, and I continued to do sketches in the hopes that there might be something better for me out there than being an infantry platoon leader, many of whom did not survive the war. Just before being shipped off to Fort Benning, Georgia, for officer candidate school, I received a timely letter from Washington, D.C., saying I had been selected for Army Artist Team 9 for 5 months of TDY assignment, that's temporary duty, to Vietnam. That sounded a lot better to me than 1 year in Vietnam as an infantry officer. In September 1969, I flew to Vietnam. I carried a sketchbook, a camera, and a rifle. The only time I fired it was when I zeroed it in on the rifle range before going out to the field. I covered all 4 core areas of Vietnam, from the demilitarized zone up north to the Mekong Delta down south. I rode out to the different field units and resupply helicopters, lovingly referred to as Hueys, and stayed until the next resupply chopper returned about 3 days later to take me back to the nearest base camp, where I could shower, eat some hot chow, and develop my photographs for returning to the field. I did quick 5 or 10 minute sketches of the grunts, asking them if they would sign their portraits in their own handwriting. I did not want my name on their drawings. It was about them, not about me. I was honored to have been in their presence, a special fraternity for sure. Upon returning home, I got a letter of appreciation from Adjutant General of the Army that said Private Hardy made a concentrated effort to record the infantry soldier and his feelings, character, and reaction to combat. His ability to record significant events and everyday experiences made a lasting impact on the men he met in the field. Over the years, people have asked me, how much combat did you see? I tell them I saw more combat on CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite when I got home than I ever saw in Vietnam. Soldiers who have experienced combat rarely talk about it. I do talk about it, so that'll tell you something. The sketches of the 5 soldiers killed on display behind me in the corners, top right, top left, bottom right, bottom left, and in the center. The sketch of those 5 soldiers killed, after reading their names, I will read the panel number and the line number where their names are etched into the polished black granite on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. Other names of those killed whom I did not sketch, but I was with, I will not read the panels and the lines due to time constraints. First Lieutenant Bill Little, top right. In the rubber trees, panel 16 west, line 58, age 22. In the rubber trees and jungle northeast of Saigon on November 11th, 1969, Lieutenant Little was killed trying to help his wounded point man. He and his radio man crawled forward in front of a bunker to get the man. The enemy opens up fire and Lieutenant Little is hit in the chest. Being careful not to smudge the drawing I did of Lieutenant Little, he rested his sweaty palms of his hand on his boonie hat as he signs my sketch 6 weeks before he was killed. That's how most of the grunts out in the field sign my sketches. Spec 4 Mark Me, panel 15 west, line 28, age 22. Mark is killed on December 5th, 1969 by a rocket-propelled grenade when his platoon is ambushed in the Rome Plow Cut. Mark wrote 2 months earlier, I want to go home, under his signature on my sketch of him. He went home to Bridgeview, Illinois for a closed casket funeral. In the mid-1980s, I find Mark's father, Art, in the phone book, and I call him telling him I have a copy of the sketch, now part of the Army's art collection, that I had done of his son, and ask if he would like a copy. He says yes, and I email him a copy. He and his wife, Margaret, fly out to visit me in San Francisco, where I live at the time. Returning from World War II in 1945, Art sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge and hadn't seen it since. It's the only thing he wants to see. I take him to Fort Point at the south end of the bridge, and we look out to the sea, to the Farallon Islands, and the setting sun. I tell him about our Braniff jetliner pilot making tight right-hand turns, circling the bridge and saying over the speaker system, "Welcome home, boys," and then a pause, make that welcome home, men. The plane erupts in cheers, everyone jumping out of their seats and going into the aisles and hugging and shaking hands with each other. The black soldiers, the brothers, are doing the DAP handshake, which takes a little bit longer. That's the only welcome home I remember hearing until the Vietnam Veterans Wall is dedicated in Washington, D.C. 12 years later. After a momentary silence, Art tells me that the day Mark is killed, halfway around the world, he is at home fast asleep in his bed in Bridgeview, Illinois, when he feels something gently touching his toe. He wakes up to see Mark standing there at the foot of his bed. Then Mark says, "I'm home, Dad. Don't you and Mom worry. Everything is okay now." I always ask myself, why Mark? Why the others and not me? It's all luck. Sergeant Leslie Trent, Panel 15W, Line 23, age 44. This letter from Becky to Sergeant Trent is from Faces on the Wall, 58,318 faces at last count, a website of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. Leslie Trent was my stepfather, and I loved him dearly. He was the only father I knew from when I was 3 till I was 11. I really miss him and wish I could be closer to him after he and my mother divorced. I would love to get in touch with his family in Chicago. Love, Becky. This is what I wrote back to Becky, or emailed. "Hello, Rebecca. I am the one who posted the sketch of your father on Faces on the Wall several years back. I was an Army artist in Vietnam. I believe that the sketch I did of him is one of the strongest portraits I did. Being a Korean War veteran, he carried a lot of respect from those around him. I am honored that I had the chance to sketch his portrait. The sketch brought back chuckles from some of the grunts looking over my shoulder. Yep, that's Sergeant Trent," one of them said. The 3 soldiers that I just mentioned here, they're on the drawings up here behind Mike. Top left, top right, and in the center. Mark me is in the center. I was assigned to my AIT training company at Fort Ord, California, after my artist assignment in Vietnam. I still had 8 more months to serve in the Army, and I wasn't too happy about being assigned laundry detail for 100 stinking trainees. So, in spite of the old Army adage, never volunteer, I volunteered to go back to Vietnam. Maybe I missed the adrenaline rush or the grunts in the field. To this day, I really don't know why. I was with the 221st Signal Company as an Army illustrator for 1 month before transferring over to the 1st Aviation Brigade for my remaining 5 months, once again riding around in helicopters. On May 9th, 1970, a U.S. Army helicopter from the 189th Assault Helicopter Company of the 1st Aviation Brigade was shot down 8 miles west of Pleiku City with a camera crew from the 221st Signal Company on board. The shoot-down occurred as the cameramen were covering the Cambodia incursion underway at the time. There were no survivors. A total of 9 personnel were lost in the incident. Pilot First Lieutenant Colin Hurd, age 25. "Colin, I love and miss you so much. I wonder what your life would be like if you were alive today. We will meet again someday. Lots of love, Lynn." Aircraft Commander Warrant Officer John McCluskey, age 29. Crew Chief Sergeant Johnny Fulton, age 19. Door Gunner PFC David Corpus, age 18. "I do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die." That was written by Mary Fry in 1932, and it was posted by Chris Spencer on Faces on the Wall. Combat Photographer Specialist 5, John Douglas Etry, Panel 10 West, Line 6, age 22. I met Dougie Eitri in second grade in St. Augustine's in South Boston, where we became inseparable friends. He was funny and talented and loyal and just a great guy. I miss the easy friendship we shared. Whenever I read about saber-rattling politicians threatening military action, I think of my smiling friend being shot out of the sky by strangers. In 1982, we named our only son Douglas. He's about draft age now, and I think about that a lot these days. That was posted by Jeff Rogers. I did several sketches of Doug. The sketch on the bottom right, I did several sketches of Doug back at the 221st Signal Company's bar just a few days before transferring over to the 1st Aviation Brigade to fill a slot that opened up by an artist who went home. Doug and I were both covering, but in different helicopters, the Cambodia incursion out of Camp Holloway in the Central Highlands when Doug was killed. The other photographers with Doug that were killed were Spec 4 Ronald Lowe, age 21, Spec 5 Christopher Childs III, age 30, Spec 4 Larry Young, age 22, and PFC Raymond. I was waiting for that. Okay. I did a wood carving once of that squad that I was with Mark Mee, and it was on display with the half-scale replica of the wall in Washington, and it was at the Veterans Home in Yountville. And when I went to pick it up, one of the wood carvings was broken, and the groundskeeper was apologizing to me for that. And I said, it don't mean nothing. I send him to the rear, I patch him up, and I send him back out again. And that was how it was in Vietnam. Raymond Paradas, he says, I remember when you and I would play Army as little kids, visiting our aunts in Peabody. I remember when we both received toy pistols and rifles for Christmas. We played soldiers on a hill behind the house on Washington Street. Little did we realize what the future held for us. Ironically, we both ended up in a signal unit, you in the 1st Signal Brigade and me in the 7th Signal Brigade. Miss you, brother. Ray's story takes me back to 1955 when I was in 5th grade. My brother and I were playing with my medal Civil War soldiers on our ping pong table in the basement. Overhearing a TV newscast that the Vietnamese communists had defeated the French at Dien Bien Phu, I asked my dad, "Do you think I will ever have to fight in a war, Dad?" He says, "I hope not, Jimmy, but there have always been wars, and there always will be wars. People never learn." 15 years later, in May 1970, I find myself fighting in a war in South Vietnam. On May 11th, 2 days after Doug is killed, Camp Holloway comes under an enemy rocket attack. First Lieutenant Ned Heinz is seriously wounded when a rocket explodes in the immediate area of his living quarters, a tent set up on Broom Field, a softball field. The same rocket kills 4 crew members of the Wolfpack gun platoon, which are in an adjoining tent. Because of the many wounds and the great loss of blood, Heinz succumbs to his injuries on May 16, 1970. First Lieutenant Heinz, age 23. Spec 4 Danny Toblee, age 19. Spec 5 Joseph Cunningham Jr., age 23. Spec 5 Daniel Scott Sutherland, age 19. And Daniel Vaughn, Panel 10 West, Line 20, age 21. I sketch a portrait of Daniel. He's the bottom left sketch. I did a sketch of Daniel, the door gunner, while we were waiting for the helicopter's engines to rev up before takeoff. I also sketched the scout dog platoon, Arthur, Law, and Duchess, who we are taking into Cambodia to look for the North Vietnamese Army. Had I not gone to a hooch on the other side of the airstrip after chow that evening with some infantry soldiers to watch, of all things, a war movie, I possibly could have been in the tent with Daniel when it was hit by the 122 rocket. Things eerily played out at the base camp throughout the rest of the night, not unlike some of the action depicted earlier in the war movie we had just been watching. It was a surreal and a very tragic night. Lieutenant J.G. Walter Koski Jr., Panel 15W, Line 94, age 26. I posted this note in January 2016. Skipper, you are second, I am third from the right on the front porch of my parents' home in Pensacola, Florida. In 1950, during more innocent times, our fathers were Navy buddies also. We both served in Vietnam at the same time, you in the Navy and me in the Army. When I did come home and you didn't, why did I come home and you did not come home? The question so many veterans always ask. You crashed into the sea on December 26, 1969. You and your radar officer managed to eject, but your parachutes did not open in time. I miss you, Jimmy. That's me talking to my little buddy from 1955. Captain William Neistel, Panel 1W, Line 124, age 29, was the last American soldier to die in Vietnam on April 29, 1975. 4.5 years after I had come home. Bill and I went to Coronado High School together. He was really a nice guy. When the waves were breaking at North Beach, he'd be out there surfing with us, but I didn't really know him that well. Bill's helicopter was unable to land on the Hancock to refuel. Some say the air boss waved him off. The aircraft carrier's deck was overcrowded with helicopters evacuating Vietnamese refugees from Saigon. It was nighttime and it was dark. Some of the deckhands recall seeing Vietnamese people hanging from the skids of Bill's helicopter. Then some of them let go and fell into the water. This might have unbalanced the helicopter, which was now low on fuel, and it plunged into the water. Some heard the flame out of the engines. Bill's and the co-pilot's, Michael Shea's bodies were never recovered. The door gunner and the crew chief, though seriously injured, were rescued. Bill was married and had a young son. I'm almost done. Can you, am I putting anybody to sleep? I hope not. 2 now veteran friends of mine died way too early from Agent Orange exposure, later to be recognized as a service-related disorder. For this reason, their names should be added to the Vietnam Memorial Wall as well, in my biased opinion. I could never fill their shoes. They both received the Silver Star and the Purple Heart for meritorious action in Vietnam. And today, my thoughts are also with them. George Mize, founder of the Friendship Village. When I lived in an old firehouse building in San Francisco in the mid-1980s, I befriended George. He would drop by and stay a night or two with me when he was in town. One night, he was thinking he'd like to build a peace pagoda or start up a hospital clinic in Vietnam to care for the Vietnamese children suffering from Agent Orange. And he asked if I wanted to help him out. I didn't think he was serious, and I bowed out. That last night that he was with me, he gave me a beautiful color photograph of a praying Buddha, which has hung on the wall in my bedroom ever since. I never saw George again. George went on to found his hospital clinic, the Friendship Village, outside of Hanoi, partnering with the Vietnamese general responsible for overrunning and killing in 1968 during Tet, George's entire platoon. George was in a hospital recovering from his wounds received just a few weeks before that. Otherwise, he would have been there with his buddies. George eventually married and fathered a son, but did not live long enough to enjoy his family or realize how many lives he changed for the better. He died of Agent Orange at the age of 56 in 2002. Jack McCluskey was twice wounded and a much decorated Vietnam veteran who quietly spent the rest of his life trying to ease the pain from the war that helped create Swords to Plowshares. He was one of the creators of Swords to Plowshares. one of the nation's premier veterans groups, dealing with then unrecognized post-traumatic stress disorder, alcoholism, suicide, joblessness, and other problems faced by veterans. Just as an aside, that's how I met Jeffrey Jewell. After I retired, Jeffrey basically helped turn my life around, and I thank you, Jeffrey. Jeffrey knows these gentlemen here that I'm talking about that have been deceased for a number of years. Michael Blecker, SWORD's executive director and the cause of veterans. Michael Blecker said, he's the executive director of Swords to Plowshares now, or he was. I haven't seen him for a number of years, but he says the cause of the veterans' rights was Jack's purpose. His whole life was dedicated to correcting the wrongs against veterans. He was a pioneer in the system of storefront veterans counseling centers now operating throughout the nation. He was in the forefront of the whole idea of peer counseling, the idea of Vietnam veterans healing themselves. I'd like to honor deceased veterans from the Middle East wars. Mike earlier mentioned Gustavo Frias, served in the Army. Gustavo and Christina Frias, Golden Star parents, are with us today. We honor you today and your son. Casey Sheehan, Iraq 2004, 1st Cav Division. We honor Pat and his family that are here today. Pat Sheehan. Iraq War veteran, U.S. Army Benjamin Brian Tollefson, age 22, killed December 31st, 2007. Gold Star mom, Mary Tollefson. Today we honor Benjamin and Mary. Iraq War veteran, Specialist Jake Veloza, age 22, killed on May 3rd, 2009. Gold Star parents, Bob and Susan Veloza. We honor Jake and Susan and Bob today. I was employed by the Golden Gate Bridge as a retrofit steel inspector from 2000 to 2015 before my retirement. Besides the bridge, I do inspections at the bridge's ferry division at Larkspur, where Jake's father, Bob, was a mechanic on the ferry boats. Bob asked me one day what it was like in Vietnam. I knew his son Jake was on his second tour in Iraq, and I didn't want to worry Bob. I told him it was like getting up every morning and going to work, except everybody wore green. Once you were in Vietnam, where were you going to go? You were there for the year before going home if you got lucky. Jake's luck ran out on May 2nd, 2009 in Mosul, Iraq, when he was killed by a Sunni suicide bomber. I had 2 poems to read, and I picked one that one of my dear friends who moved back to the East Coast was a nurse in Vietnam. Her name was Peggy Tuxon Akers, and last I saw her was in the mid-1980s, but we've kept in contact on email occasionally. She wrote a poem, Dear America, remember me? I was the girl next door. Remember when I was 13 and I rode on top of the fire engine in the Memorial Day parade? I won an essay contest on what it meant to be a proud American. And it was always me, America, the cheerleader, the Girl Scout, who marched in front of the high school band, carrying our flag, the tallest, the proudest. And remember, America, you gave me the Daughters of the American Revolution Good Citizenship Award for patriotism, and I was only 16. And then you sent me to war, America, with thousands of other men and women who loved you. It's Veterans Day, America. Do you hear the flags snapping in the wind? There's a big sale at Macy's, and there's a big parade in Washington for the veterans. But it's not the American flag or the sound of the drums I hear. I hear the sound of a helicopter coming in. I smell the burning flesh. It's Thomas, America, the young kid from Atlanta. My patient incinerated by a gas tank blown up in a useless, immoral war. I remember how his courage kept him alive that day, America, and I clung to his only finger and whispered over and over again how proud you were of him, America. And he died. And fam, he was only 8, America, and you sprayed him with napalm, and his skin fell off in my hands, and he screamed as I tried to comfort him. And America, what did you do with Robbie, the young kid I sat next to on the plane to Vietnam? His friends told me a piece of shrapnel ripped through his young heart. He was only 17. It was his first time away from home. What did you tell his mother and father, America? Hold us, America. Hold all your children, America. Alan will never hold anyone again. He left his arms and legs back there. He left them for you, America. America, you never told me that I'd have to put so many of your sons, the boys next door, in body bags. You never told me. Thank you.